Did Penn State find the next Saquon Barkley? Well, it's very possible because this player is ranked top 10 in the nation overall, and he's already committed to Penn State's class of 2027.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football recruiting. Thank you so much for making this crossover episode your first listen and watch today. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. He is Brian Smith, host of The Portal, our recruiting expert insider here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Thank you to the everydayers for making us a part of your regular routine. If you're not an everydayer, become one. Subscribe to the YouTube channels and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest around high school football recruiting and the Penn State Nittany Lions. We are talking about how Penn State may have found the next Saquon Barkley. Now, that is pretty high praise, but Kemon Spell, the resume speaks for itself. So we're going to talk about what Spell brings to the Nittany Lions. He's already shut down his recruitment this early in the process, but Penn State's off to a hot start, a red hot start for the 2027 class because they have an elite running back, an elite wide receiver, and an elite offensive lineman all committed to this point. And President Trump has made an interesting declaration with an executive order potentially stopping NIL and collectives. We're going to wrap the show up with that. Brian, you're ready to hit on all of those topics. We're going to start with Kemon Spell. Spell's a top 10 player in the nation, top 10 player overall, number one running back. He's in the state of Pennsylvania. But you're a little hesitant to say that he is the next Saquon Barkley. There's a lot of traits that I see in him that say, okay, this is justified. And of course, the ranking, right? The ranking's going to go along with that. But you're a little hesitant to say, yeah, he is Barkley 2.0. Why is that?
Saquon Barkley's legs are similar to Bo Jackson's. I don't see that with Kemon Spell. Barkley's legs and the way he can move in space for a big guy is not normal. Like, I don't know if I'll ever see Herschel Walker or Bo Jackson again, but Barkley's very similar to those guys. He's probably a little more nimble laterally, maybe not quite as fast as Bo. Bo was like sub 4.2, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I know that's crazy. But yeah. Kemon Spell, yeah, he got timed a couple of times below that. Kemon Spell, I mean, he's still got 2 years of high school left. Let's see how big he gets and if he can continue to make defenders miss. And all, like, he's got all the traits for a running back that you look for: vision, speed, power, all that. But the size that Barkley did it at was weird. I still remember the first time I saw Barkley return a kick. It was against Ohio State. And it was either he scored or he had a long run or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it doesn't look normal when a guy's that big as a return. I'm like, I didn't know he returned kicks. I'm like, oh, wow. So I don't know if anybody's going to be like that walking through the door at any school anytime soon. Barkley was pretty rare.
And Barkley, the thing with Saquon was, well, no one was truly aware except the people that were coaching him and working alongside of him on a routine basis. Came in as this Saquon was committed to Rutgers originally, right? And then flipped to Penn State. Yeah, that's the lore about that's the lore about Saquon Barkley, is that he was committed to Rutgers of all places and then flipped to Penn State. So that's what Penn State's recruiting is. They try to find those diamonds in the rough early on, and they say, to heck with the rankings. But here, everyone knows about Kemon Spell already. And that's why Penn State felt it was a major priority to get him on board, get him committed this early in the cycle. We're talking about 2027, folks. And I get it. Oh, is he going to stay committed? Could he flip? Especially with the way that the 2026 class has gone. Brian, you and I have already talked about that. And Kemon Spell has already verbally expressed that his recruitment shut down. Khalil Taylor, who we're going to talk about in the upcoming segment, an elite wide receiver prospect with Penn State's wide receiver woes, they both shut down their recruitments to this point in time. So Kemon Spell, at the very minimum, is going to be the face of this Penn State class of 2027 and could play sooner rather than later. So the next Saquon Barkley, well, we know what he did. He was a Heisman contender. Defenses spend sleepless nights trying to game plan for him. I mean, Spell does that at the high school level. And I think all those traits are going to translate to the next level. You can say that this guy can have All-America expectations, but to be a number 2 overall pick, I agree with you. That's a little of a lofty expectation, but like I said, I do see Saquon Barkley-esque type of things from Kemon Spell.
There's nothing wrong with aiming for the stars. And like, he's a kid that had a bunch of offers before he finished his sophomore year of high school. So obviously he's a very talented young man. Again, now it's just a question of how big can he get and keep that speed and elusiveness, because his vision and his power are already good. And hopefully he just stays healthy. I mean, they get to enjoy his college career, because running back's brutal, but like, I don't think many high school kids are going to do much to him. He's probably going to break a lot of records at his high school if he hasn't already.
He's from McKeesport, Pennsylvania. That's where he goes to high school. Maybe, again, his senior season could look different. Maybe he goes to a prep academy at some point. I'm not sure. But I mean, McKeesport is still one of they play better. They play better competition, not top tier, but they play better competition. And they're in the WPIAL, right? So they're always going to play better competition as it is. But consensus number 1 running back in the country. Rivals, who's now merged with On3, so there's no more On3 recruiting, but Rivals has him as the number 8 overall player in the country. This guy is the not quite consensus number 1 overall player in Pennsylvania. ESPN actually has him at number 2 in Pennsylvania. Like I said, Khalil Taylor is committed to this class of 2027, so we're going to talk about that. Any final thoughts on Kemon Spell as far as, how soon do you think he would play right away? Because Penn State's still loaded at running back. They're getting ready to transition to, if we're looking for the future, Quentin Martin, Corey Smith, Cam Wallace. They're loaded. And then with what they have in Messiah Mickens committed to the class of 2026, I mean, it's not like this is going to be, you need Kemon Spell to get here as soon as possible and have him go as a true freshman. No, Penn State has the luxury where they're still going to have this stable of running backs where they could have 2 or 3 play pretty consistently. And I imagine Spell gets into the rotation early on, but isn't that clear-cut number 1 starter because of what Penn State already has.
That's the best situation for a running back. You see fewer guys worrying about playing time now as running backs, because the goal is to get to the NFL with as much tread left on the tires as possible.
Yeah.
Georgia, Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, it's like, play at a school where there's a bunch of rotations, probably better for you. So he's better off that way. You get to adjust to college, not get beat up as much. And the NFL doesn't want guys that have taken all the carries anyway. So he'll play fairly early, but yeah, he may not start till like his junior year, if that, because they're doing so well. And that's fine.
Yeah.
It's not about who starts at running back. That's the one spot. It's not as big a deal. So
yeah,
I don't think it matters, but he is a great football prospect.
Timing is everything, because Penn State's running back room was obviously not loaded when Saquon Barkley stepped on foot on campus at the time. So there was a window of opportunity for immediately to make a name for himself. And you couldn't keep him off the football field. But in this case, Kemon Spell's timeline is a little different. And I didn't even mention Jabri Wallace-Coleman or Tyke Hayes, who are part of the class of 2025. So Penn State, like I said, when Kemon Spell shows up, is going to have a lot of talent already ahead of him, but it's an embarrassment of riches for Penn State football and what they've done over the almost a decade here, almost a decade. So now the 2027 class is off to a hot start, and it's not just Kemon Spell that headlines this class. No, an elite wide receiver. I know Penn State fans are probably not used to that. Plus an elite offensive lineman, and Penn State, they're going to be targeting other elite quarterbacks, other elite players. Let's get to what Penn State has with this class of 2027 after not the best recruiting cycle for 2026. That's coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. Now, are you new to FanDuel? Well, new customers can bet just $5 and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. And all you got to do is open up the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com to get started. And all of those sports I mentioned, Major League Baseball, professional golf, pro soccer, international soccer, WNBA, you can even bet on Penn State football. you think, and you can use your bonus bets on Penn State football. Do you think they're going to go over or under 10.5 wins? Season hasn't started yet, and you can make a wager on Penn State football if you want. And if you are new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Again, open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. So Kemon Spell isn't the only player committed to the class of 2027. No, Penn State is off to a red-hot start, and pretty typical, actually. That's par for the course for what James Franklin likes to do. He wants to take care of the recruiting class sooner rather than later. So if you can get a commitment, one thing to get a commitment for, but for Spell and then Khalil Taylor to shut down their recruitments at that point in time, I think that's very impressive to say that, hey, we're not taking any more visits. We're locked into Penn State, and we know this far in advance. Okay. Let's talk about Khalil Taylor, because Brian, you went to some of those summer camps, summer showcases, and you saw Taylor in person. And Taylor, I imagine, is as good as advertised. I mean, this is a player that is top 30 in the nation. Consensus is a top 3 wide receiver in the country. And again, what do you like about Taylor's game, and maybe a player comp if you have one, a Jahan Dotson or something like that? But what stood out to you about Taylor?
When he runs, I saw him at Future 50 Under Armour down at IMG Academy in Florida. When he runs, it's pretty effortless. I assume he's got some kind of a track background, I'm not sure, but he's very fluid in his motion. And it doesn't even look like he's really trying, but he's pulling away from kids that are really good. And the DB class in 27 is absolutely ultra elite. And he was running away from some of those kids. There are 4 or 5 DBs that could be top 20 in that class. He could run as faster than just about all of them. And this is a kid that just kind of looks it, he talks it, he walks it, and he's pretty basic kid. He's not an arrogant guy or anything. He's just A to B, very, very much an all shucks personality. I think he'll fit in at Penn State, but the speed is what stands out physically. Yeah, he runs by just about everybody.
Let me correct myself and say that Khalil Taylor is a top 32 overall player according to Rivals, and a top 10 wide receiver among the consensus rankings. So forgive me, I was going purely off of the Rivals rankings, but that's his. I want to get that right. That's still a top 50 player. And that's somebody that could end up, if you're going off of Rivals specifically, that's somebody that could end up as a 5-star. So there was a rankings correction because he was ranked as a top 30 player in the consensus. He was a top 3 overall wide receiver, but he's still in that category. Do you see him as a boundary player in the slot?
I think he's a guy that you're going to move around. I would probably play him like in a 3-wide set. I would play him to the field out wide. Boundaries are usually bigger guys. I don't know if he'll grow into that. He might, but he's going to play it at 200 pounds or more in college. He's got the combination you're looking for all around. Depending how much he enjoys the contact, boundaries a little different because you're going to have a big dude in front of you a lot. But if you don't get your hands on him, and redirect his route, it's pretty rough to keep him from going where he wants. He's special talent.
Stands at 5'11", 180. Bottom line is Penn State has an elite wide receiver committed. Marcus Hagans get it finally. Not just, again, people are going to say that they settle, but no, he continues to push the bar forward. And Khalil Taylor is now that iteration of what Penn State's outlook is for the wide receiver room. Again, not the only player that Penn State has committed to this point. And that third player is Layton Von Brandt. Again, I want to make sure that I have the rankings correct. Top consensus, top 40 player overall across the board, ranked as the 6th offensive tackle and consensus number 1 player in the state of Delaware. So Penn State once again goes back to the state of Delaware, which they've done quite a bit in this, or I guess more routinely, I should say, with the players that they've gotten in this class for 2025, which is Sear Rogers and Isaac Chukara. They go back and they find Layton Von Brandt out of the state of Delaware is a top 40 player. And it's another player that I guess to this point, I haven't seen him verbally, publicly express that, hey, his recruitment has been shut down, but he's all in on Penn State. And this is another player where you have a headline prospect, kind of like Kevin Brown in 2026. Layton Von Brandt is just next year's version of that.
Yeah, he's a really good prospect playing inside. I don't know if he'll be a center or guard, and I wonder if he could be a swing player that could play right tackle if you needed him to, but he's a big kid already. And it is odd that they've gotten lucky with some kids from Delaware and states like that you don't normally think of.
Yeah.
Penn State's done a good job of finding the diamonds in the rough, as you talk about quite often, and rightfully so. Kind of hard to miss this kid, though. I imagine where he's at, you didn't need a roster to figure out which one he was on the field. I have a feeling that he kind of stood out and he said, that must be him. But yeah, he's a road grader, and Penn State getting it done early like this, man, it's going to help them down the road because there's so many battles for the top kids. Getting a few of them out of the way early, it's a lot easier to play from the lead after a kid's already publicly announced for your school. So good job by Penn State staff.
And that's where, and Penn State has said this too, that this is where a lot of the recruiting is done. It's a domino effect where you have potentially 3 5-star players. If Von Brandt is a composite 5-star, according to 24/7. So Khalil Taylor at one point in time, or if you're going off of the top 32, according to Rivals, that's a 5-star. Even though he's a fringe 5-star, he's a 5-star based on that. Kemon Spell, top 10 player in the nation, 5-star. Layton Von Brandt could find he's just on the outside of being a 5-star, as the 36th overall player if you look at the consensus ratings. So rankings. At Penn State, with 3 potential 5-star players, whether they're ranked that way or not, I think there is 5-star potential for them at the end. You have 3 elite prospects, and the job's not done. We've seen Notre Dame, and this is where I want to pivot briefly to quarterback before we talk about what President Trump has done here with an executive order that could change NIL and collectives. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen, but that's why we'll talk about it. Notre Dame gets a quarterback prospect, somebody that Penn State was within his top 5. Notre Dame picked up a commitment from Teddy Gerard recently, and now it means that Penn State's got to get going, because I think this happened. This feels very reminiscent of Bell committing to Texas, and Penn State really wanted him badly. I'm not saying that they had that kind of relationship where, Penn State was kind of maybe the 2nd or 3rd school. I'm not sure where Penn State was in that top 5, but you miss out on a top quarterback prospect, which means that you got to get going on potentially getting and not missing on Peter Bourque, who already has not the strongest, but at least has a prediction from 24/7. There's a crystal ball for Bourque to end up at Penn State. It's not a heavy, confident one, but it's still there. That's something. You get your quarterback taken care of, boom. You just got your quarterback, your running back, and your wide receiver, and some form of franchise tackle or an anchor at whatever, tackle, guard, play him wherever. You couldn't have asked for a better start for 2027 if you can do that. But it's important to get quarterback as soon as possible.
Now that Teddy Gerard has popped for Notre Dame, and for whatever it's worth, like he's number 2 quarterback by Rivals in that class. Not everybody's seen every other kid they need to see live, but just bear with me. There could be a run on quarterbacks early. Mm-hmm. If 1 or 2 more pop, then you got to figure it out. So, because most schools, Penn State, Notre Dame, et cetera, they usually take 1 in a class. So it pushes things forward. I'll be curious to see if Penn State makes a move for Bourque, like really tries to get him on campus for one of the first games and gets him to commit, or somebody else. I don't know what their board is, but that's an interesting scenario. I don't believe there's a big-time quarterback in Pennsylvania in 27 class, but I don't know. I haven't seen everybody's film yet. But there'll be somebody. That'll be an interesting situation because, like you said, receivers in the boat. They got at least 1 lineman. There's a couple other, obviously Maxwell Hiller and several other guys are after on the East Coast. Hiller might be the best player in Pennsylvania. They might have 3 top 10, top 15 prospects in the country in Pennsylvania next year. And you also have the ability to still – we haven't even talked about D.C., Maryland. Penn State's done so well there, and the 757 in Virginia. They're off to a really good start.
Like I said, those players, those prospects that are committed do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So when you have running back, wide receiver, and an anchor of a tackle, anchor of an offensive lineman there, you're off to a phenomenal start. Now, let's bring it back to the present. Just as we were ahead of recording this, breaking news. President Trump has declared an executive order that stops collectives. No more pay for play. Brian, you have some strong thoughts about it, so I can't wait to hear your explanation and your reasoning for all of this coming up next here on this Locked On Crossover. So, Brian, you're going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting here in this conversation. I saw the headline, so I'll set the table and then, go after it. as President Trump has signed an executive order where he claims that he is saving college sports. And this basically stops the pay for play, that the universities are the only ones. And there's so much nuance to this. What is this? Are they employees, student athletes? So there's going to be lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit because, some schools are going to like this, but there are other schools out there that are foaming at the mouth right now that they might not be able to carry on with the way that they do with these aggressive collectives. Brian, your thoughts?
If I had 20 minutes, it wouldn't be enough. This is big box lawyer talk as it gets, which I hate in general, but here's the 20-second version. NIL collectives are going to have to go through what they call NIL Go. It's the NIL clearinghouse on August 1st. All the deals go through it. But they wanted originally these outside entities, these collectives, with the house settlement, that money to go in towards that total. Then they backed off of it. Well, they probably did because they knew Trump was going to do this. They were trying to avoid getting sued. It's not going to work. Trump's trying to help out the schools and all that. I get it. But players are still, like, they let the genie out of the bottle. There's still going to be a bazillion lawsuits. Executive order or not, you're not going to tell kids what they are or not worth. And they're trying to avoid.
Who's to say that?
Yeah, and they're going to try like crazy not to get them to be employees, but it's inevitable. This is the slow roll down the hill. Trump just kind of jumped on the grenade for the schools, but there's no way around it. They're going to have to give up more money. The TV companies are going to have to give up more money, and they don't like it. That's why I look at it. And he's old school. He would like to see college athletes be amateurs. That day's over. Most of my older friends feel exactly the same way, but that's beside the point. I think that the collectives will also sue. I don't think that executive order holds much water. There's some do and some don't. I don't think this one will. And regardless of what happens in the courts, now that the genie's out of the bottle, if they want to be involved, they're just going to pay the kids under the table like they always did before. And if you don't pay under the table, you're going to get annihilated in recruiting. I mean, annihilated, because that genie's done. These collectives are ready to roll. They are not going to put their money away.
Yeah, if you want your school to win. I mean, that's the thing with NIL. And I just said this recently because Penn State had record donations to the athletic program. And I know a lot of that was the stadium renovations. But what it shows is that, okay, Penn State's not going to be left in the dust in this NIL arms race. That they have the money. They have the donor base. They almost had 20,000 individual donors. So that just says it. When people say that Penn State has the largest living alumni base, that there's really no excuse why they can't be a player in NIL. Yeah, that's true. There's tangible proof of that. So Penn State, one way or another, is always going to be relevant. And I think what my biggest issue with NIL as it is that no one will ever truly go through a rebuild period, is that you are always going to be somewhat relevant. The floor is always going to be raised for anybody. I mean, it's Penn State, it's Texas Tech, it's Oregon, it's Ohio State, that you could have all this roster turnover, but you have the ample NIL funds to go and reload that roster for your coaching staff. I still think chemistry and culture and all that is still going to play a factor, but now that becomes the difference between, hey, you could be 8-4 to now you're still going to be 10-2 and probably sneak into the playoffs. And if you built that chemistry in time, you could go on a run. So NIL kind of takes out the organic part of college football. And I think that's what most people are going to miss. I'm going to miss that it's going to feel very inorganic moving forward, that the people with the most money are always going to be relevant.
I think that's very true. There are about 10 schools that I think will pretty much dominate the top. That second tier will fluctuate constantly. A school like Texas Tech might end up in that tier. But as I've said on this show before, I'll say it again, O-line, D-line recruiting in particular, those kids usually go to the same schools, the elite players, every single year. Penn State is one of them. There are about 10 or so schools that get them. Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Texas, USC. Like, it's not a hard list to figure out. And that until that changes, the end of the day, in the Final Four, you're probably going to see at least 3 of those schools in the Final Four most years, and it's not going to change. Penn State will certainly be back pretty soon.
Now, right now, if you had to put, yes, Trump's executive order is going to help, it's going to stabilize, or it's just a big nothing. It's not, it doesn't mean anything. It's just fancy lingo. Does it actually tangibly change anything, or is it really just, it's headlines, it's attention, it doesn't matter?
I think it's tangible because it is, it's documented, and the timing of it is interesting because we're a week away from the NIL collectives having to send in their stuff and the schools having to send in their stuff on all these deals.
Yeah.
So now you got to say, well, if we can't do this, are we allowed to even, like, all deals across college football and college athletics? A lot of that money is coming from these collectives.
Yeah.
There's going to be either a lot of lying going on, or they're just going to start lawsuits. So it's going to be a lot more information because, again, there's no way they're going to just sit by idly. Boosters that's just not how it works in today's world. So, and that doesn't even count the agents and the players and their families potentially suing too.
Yeah.
It will be interesting. And I don't think that Trump did this by accident. I think they waited a little closer to see what all the reaction would be, but this is going to be a battle for years. It's going to be drawn out forever.
All right, so there's what we have right now, is that this isn't going to have anything immediately, but down the road, this could be the grounds, the stage for at least some stabilization of college. Everyone cares about college football. So I would say college athletics, but this is all about college football. That is where we're going to wrap it up on this Locked On crossover, talking Penn State football recruiting between Locked On Nittany Lions and the portal. Go check out, become an everydayer. Subscribe to the YouTube channels and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest around recruiting, the transfer portal with the portal, and all things Penn State sports over on Locked On Nittany Lions. He's Brian Smith. I'm Zach Seyko. Thank you so much for joining us on this crossover show. And Brian, thank you so much for the time, the insight, and the analysis, as always.
Appreciate it.